The Untold Adventures of Biao. Season 1. Episode 19. Mr. Gong told Biao the story, but he always kept his eyes on the bloody corpse torn by the black dogs. Since that moment, it couldn't hurt anyone anymore. He felt relief finally. The corpse-eating dog took the opportunity to take the heart of the corpse. It looked at the old man as if to remind him that this was the reward it deserved. When Mr. Gong saw that scene, he was relieved and turned to Biao. He asked him to go down and check the situation. "Let's go down there and see what happened." They used the kunai with the chain to go down the hole. After destroying the bloody corpse, this grave was no longer dangerous. So they looked very calm. "Dad, this is my first time going down to the grave." "So, are you scared already?" Mr. Gong observed the grave and found that there were not many burial objects around. He told Biao that this was the grave that he had opened 10 years ago. This grave is also considered to belong to a rich person. There are not many burial objects around, probably in the coffin containing many treasures. When the lid was opened, they discovered a red layer. Mr. Gong briefly explained that it was fresh blood after a long time of condensation turned into that shape. Biao felt disgusted at the scene in front of him. Mr. Gong was a brave man and had a long time in this job. He calmly sat down and searched for the treasure in the coffin. "What's so disgusting about these things? You'll see more scary kinds of stuff in the future." After searching for a while, Mr. Gong discovered 2 treasures, a piece of red jade and a short sword. The strange thing was that no matter how many years have passed, the 2 treasures still look new, not rotten or scratched at all. Mr. Gong just pulled the short sword out of its sheath. Suddenly a bright light flashed across the grave. Where the short sword was drawn, the light was blinding. That made Biao's face pale with fear. "Dad, this looks scary." Although Biao was afraid, Mr. Gong had the treasure in his hand and felt that his efforts were not wasted at all. He immediately took away the sword. "This sword is a true treasure. Its killing intent is so strong. No wonder why you are scared of it." At this moment, Mr. Gong felt the killing intent from behind him. He and Biao immediately turned around, probably due to the killing of the short sword, which startled the ghosts. But when they turned around, they found it out. Biao immediately discovered a female ghost lying on a jar next to the wall thanks to his yin-yang eyes. "Dad, it's a female ghost. She's wearing a costume." That female ghost seemed to be trapped by the jar, constantly lowering her head and crying. It didn't seem to have any malice towards Mr. Gong and Biao. On the contrary, it looked pitiful. As far as Mr. Gong knew, this was the concubine who was buried with the husband. Maybe she suffocated in the jar and prevented the soul from escaping. She is just the concubine of the grave owner. She was forced to suffocate in the jar. Because she was not an official wife, she could not be in the coffin with her husband. How pitiful she is. Mr. Gong immediately told Biao to light some incense for her to help her soul be liberated soon. Biao immediately asked, "Dad, why should we do these things? You girl, hurry up and reincarnate. This incense is very expensive." Biao was always like that. He was always babbling when it comes to comparing compensation versus efforts. This time was the same. When Biao opened the lid of the jar, white smoke immediately spread out. "Oh, seeing such a beautiful soul but the remains in the jar just like everyone else. I wish you luck in reincarnation. If you meet the King of Hell, remember to tell some kind words about me. This incense is not cheap at all. If you remember to reincarnate as a girl in the future, then marry someone as an official wife, don't be a concubine anymore." That white smoke crept out of the grave while Biao was still babbling. They were in the grave for a long time, and the phosphor light was about to go out. It did not seem like there was anything interesting here anymore. Mr. Gong then called Biao back home. But in response to his father's words, Biao did not show much enthusiasm. "Dad, can I keep a treasure and give it to Zanni?" It turned out that when Biao opened the jar, he discovered a pearl bracelet. He wanted to bring it back for Zanni. But when his father quoted the girl's bracelet as an antique, and its price was not low, Biao was shocked. "Yes, you can. But that bracelet worth 100,000. If you give it to Zanni, would you mind?" 100,000, really, Dad?" Finally, they were able to climb back to the ground. Biao kept looking at the bracelet. He did not want to give it to Zanni anymore due to its value. Mr. Gong looked into the distance, where the corpse-eating dog was preparing to lead his pack back to the forest. At this time, the dogs finished the bloody corpse. Not even a piece of bone was left. Mr. Gong clasped his hands to thank the dog. Biao also knew that it saved his life several times, so he also joined his father. Thank you. I will definitely give a big thanks tomorrow." The dog seemed to understand what the old man said. It looked at them for a moment and then started to howl a few times as if calling for the dogs to return. Immediately after, the dogs returned to the deep forest. Mr. Gong saw Biao looking at the dogs in bewilderment as if he was thinking about his origin. So he immediately interrupted that thought by calling him home. "Stop looking. Let's go home." But only for a moment. When Biao let out a voice, Mr. Gong almost fainted. "Dad, you say, is it too risky for me to give Zanni this bracelet? What if one day she doesn't marry me? I'll be empty-handed." Mr. Gong didn't want to listen to his words anymore, so he pulled out his short sword. The light from the sword made Biao stop talking and immediately backed away. "Okay, Dad. Okay, I won't say anything more." Mr. Gong saw that Biao was silent and told him that the most important treasure he had obtained today was the short sword. Mr. Gong told him about the power of the sword, which shocked him. "This sword is very powerful. With it in hand, no demons dare to come near us. In addition, it can also sense bad omens coming. Is that sword so powerful? I also had one in the past, but it took a lot of work to get it." "Dad, how did you get it? Can you tell me?" Next episode, we'll get to that story.